The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the narrow alleyways of the city into glistening rivers of water that reflected the dim streetlights. Daniel, a single dad juggling two jobs, hurried through the downpour, heart pounding, drawn by the sound of desperate cries above him. On the rooftop of a crumbling building, he saw a small boy, no older than 10, trembling violently in the wind, his soaked clothes clinging to him like a second skin. The boy's eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto the edge, and Daniel's stomach twisted in panic. "Stay with me," he shouted, voice cracking as he scrambled up the fire escape, adrenaline surging through his veins. The wind whipped around them, making it almost impossible to hold onto the boy as he slipped slightly, but Daniel caught him just in time, pulling him close, wrapping his arms around the trembling child as though holding his own life in that moment depended on it. The boy, shivering uncontrollably, whispered, "I just want my mommy," and Daniel's heart clenched with a mixture of fear and empathy. He noticed a small pendant hanging from the boy's neck, glinting faintly in the rain, engraved with initials he recognized from a missing child case that had haunted the city months ago. A chill ran through him. This wasn't just a random child lost to the streets, this was a boy whose story had been ignored, whose life had been overlooked by a world too busy to notice. Carefully, Daniel lifted the boy from the rooftop, carrying him down to safety, his mind racing with questions, and possibilities, and a deep, unshakable need to protect him. As they reached the sidewalk, drenched and trembling, Daniel realized that this encounter was no accident, it was the beginning of a journey neither of them could have anticipated, a journey that would reveal secrets long buried and force Daniel to confront his own grief, his own fears, and the powerful bond forming between him and this lost, frightened boy whose very existence now rested in Daniel's hands. Back in Daniel's small apartment, the boy clung to a dry blanket, his tiny hands shaking as the warmth seeped slowly into his soaked clothes. Daniel moved carefully around the room, setting down a cup of steaming cocoa, trying to offer comfort without overwhelming him. "You're safe here," he whispered, sitting beside the boy on the worn couch, the rain still pounding against the windows like a reminder of the storm outside, and the storm that had been the boy's life until this moment. The boy's wide eyes, dark and haunted, finally met Daniel's, and he whispered his name, Eli. The name hit Daniel like a jolt of recognition, memories of missing child reports and police bulletins he had seen months ago surged back, each detail pressing against him like a warning he could not ignore. Eli's story began to unfold in fragments, each one a shard of pain. A mother who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, a father who had cared little for his existence, and nights spent hiding in abandoned buildings and alleyways to avoid the dangers of a world that had failed him. Daniel listened intently, heart aching as he recognized the echoes of his own loneliness and grief in the boy's words. He had lost his wife years ago, raising his daughter alone in a city that often seemed indifferent to the struggles of single parents and vulnerable children alike. But Eli's story held something more, something unsettling. He spoke of specific events and details that matched a high-profile missing child case, details that only the family and authorities would know. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine. This was no ordinary lost boy. As he held Eli closer, he realized that this child had been living in secrecy, perhaps in danger, perhaps hidden intentionally, and now it was Daniel's responsibility to unravel the truth and protect him. Hours passed in quiet conversation, punctuated by the occasional tear and sob, until Eli's breathing slowed, exhaustion overtaking fear. Daniel looked at the boy sleeping fitfully in the blanket's folds, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a fragile hope stir within him, a hope that perhaps together, they could face the darkness of their pasts and find safety, connection, and trust in each other. It was the beginning of something neither had anticipated, a bond forged in fear, compassion, and an unspoken promise. Daniel would not let Eli face the world alone again. The following morning, Daniel awoke to the faint sound of pans rattling in the kitchen and found Eli quietly trying to make toast, his small hands fumbling with the unfamiliar appliance. The sight tugged at Daniel's heart, a reminder of how desperately the boy wanted to belong somewhere, to feel useful, to be noticed. They ate together in silence, but Daniel's mind raced with unanswered questions. Determined to uncover the truth, he took the pendant Eli wore and examined the initials again, the engraving unmistakable. With quiet resolve, he decided to retrace the boy's past, starting with the local police precinct. However, the officer on duty barely gave them more than a passing glance, brushing Daniel off with bureaucratic indifference. "No records of a boy by that name," the officer said, as if Eli's existence were nothing more than a shadow. Frustrated but not defeated, Daniel refused to let the system's neglect bury this child's story. He began asking questions in the neighborhood, showing the pendant to pawn shops and old acquaintances until finally, a lead emerged. A teacher from a private school across town recognized the initials, recalling they belonged to a wealthy family who had reported their son missing 2 years earlier under strange circumstances. The revelation shook Daniel. Eli wasn't just a forgotten child. He was the missing boy from a family with resources, connections, and unanswered questions. As they left the school, Eli clutched Daniel's hand tightly, fear etched into his face as if he knew what was coming. That night, back in the small apartment, Daniel tucked Eli into his daughter's old bed, whispering gently, "You're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you." Eli's eyes welled with tears, but instead of breaking down, he whispered a soft, "Thank you," before drifting into sleep. For Daniel, the words ignited a fire in his chest. This boy trusted him, depended on him, and now it was his duty not only to protect Eli from whatever shadows haunted his past but also to uncover the truth that had kept him hidden for so long. Lying awake, Daniel realized that the journey was far from over. Tomorrow would bring harder questions, dangerous answers, and perhaps people who wanted Eli to remain lost forever. But one thing was certain: Daniel would not abandon him, not now, not ever. Days blurred into weeks as Daniel worked tirelessly to piece together the fragments of Eli's past, each discovery pulling him deeper into a tangled web of secrets. His search finally led him back to the missing child case reports, where he found a shocking detail that made everything click. Eli's disappearance had never been random. His mother had fled with him to protect him from a violent stepfather who held power and influence in the city. The police had quietly closed the case when the family's wealth silenced the matter, leaving Eli to vanish into obscurity. Daniel's chest tightened with anger at the injustice, but beneath that fury was a fierce determination to shield the boy from further harm. With his persistence and the help of a compassionate social worker, Daniel was able to contact Eli's mother, who had been living in hiding, waiting for a safe moment to reunite with her son. When the day came, Eli clung to Daniel, terrified that this new chapter meant losing the only sense of safety he had known in years. Daniel knelt down, looked into his eyes, and promised, "No matter what happens, you'll never be alone again." The reunion was raw and emotional. Eli's mother wept as she held him, whispering apologies and words of love that had been trapped in her heart for years. And yet, through the joy of reunion, Eli's small hand never left Daniel's, as though part of him feared letting go of the man who had saved him from the rooftop and given him back his sense of worth. In that moment, Daniel understood that family wasn't bound by blood alone, it was built on love, sacrifice, and the courage to stay when it mattered most. The authorities, now with undeniable evidence, placed Eli under the temporary guardianship of Daniel until the legal battle to remove his stepfather's rights could be resolved. Standing in the golden glow of a new morning, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years: hope. Eli looked up at him, eyes brighter than the night they met, and whispered the same words Daniel had cried out on that rooftop: "Stay with me." Daniel pulled him close, tears stinging his eyes, and with a steady voice he answered, "Always." For both of them, it was not just a promise, it was the start of a new beginning, a second chance at family, healing, and love.